I am Captain Morgan. No, I don't like rum, and I didn't make up the title of the name. That's really me. The unit that I am lucky enough to command is a volunteer reenacting unit. We represent and follow the procedures used by the 125th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. It was formed in 1862-63 in northern Ohio, actually in Trumbull County, up in Warren, Ohio, just south of Cleveland. We selected that unit to portray because they fought with General Sherman and other generals in 1863 and 1864 through the entire Atlanta campaign, starting with the Battle of Chickamauga, fighting all the way down what is now I-75, through many different battles, ended up here, fought in a significant battle over at Cheatham Hill. If you get a chance to go over there and see that part of this park, it's very well preserved. We were at that battle the lead skirmish unit for the entire Union Army. Got pinned down in front of pretty much what is now the area over there known as the Dead Angle. We couldn't get up, we couldn't get out. They tried to get us back. The fire from the Rebs was so heavy, we had to crawl out pretty much that evening in the dark. What we're going to show you today is some of the training methods and tactics that were used by both the Confederate and the Union Army during the Civil War. They were used by both sides because at the beginning of the war, all the generals that were worth anything had gone to school together at West Point. So they all learned how to fight exactly the same way. The drill manuals at the beginning of the war were the same until the Union came up with a new drill manual, but it was very similar to the manual, the Hardee's manual that was being used by the Confederate States of America. So the movements they were making, the way they were loading, the way they were fighting, the bayonet drill, everything was pretty much the same. We're going to first start by having one of the privates come forward. Private Crone, step forward. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the uniform and the equipment that he is carrying and using today.
I'm Private Crone and I portray a private in the 125th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. Today I'm going to talk to you about my uniform. We're going to start from the boots down and work our way up. So, to begin with, these are what we call brogans. Brogans are standard issue. The Army started issuing them to soldiers in 1851. What the brogan was made out of was leather. If you look at the bottom of my boot and you see the heel, it's just like a horseshoe. That was used to gain traction on the field. I don't have any knobs on here, but some of the soldiers here who do, those knobs help to gain traction as well. Brogans were a vital part of the uniform. They protected our feet on the long marches. A lot of times our soldiers did 20 to 25 miles a day, so you had to protect those feet. These tended to become comfortable after you broke them in for a little while, but the shelf life on them wasn't very long. Once they started getting wet and you started marching through mud, they would start to fall apart on you. They had to be replaced constantly. The next thing is going to be my uniform. My trousers and my blouse here, they're all made out of wool. Now, this was our full year-round uniform. We didn't have a summer, a spring, a winter uniform. It was wool all year round. There's some protective properties for wool. Wool was used to help first insulate the body. When you started to sweat and you're in the hot Georgia heat, that wool helped to insulate your body. It kept you actually pretty cool. Another thing was during the winter months, it kept you warm. Now, another reason why we wore wool was the fire protective abilities. So, when you would fire these rounds, when you fire your rifled infield, and these weapons would spark either here or up front, if you're wearing cotton, there's a good chance it might catch on fire over time. But with wool, it'll help stop those sparks from catching your clothes on fire and igniting it. A lot of soldiers spent a lot of time around the fire when they weren't doing duties. The wool kept them safe from sparking then too. The next property we're going to talk about is our belt here. So we have our cartridge belt here, which is what we carried our ammo in. Inside there'd be two tin cans that would help protect the rounds from igniting. It also helped carry rounds. You can load it top to bottom. See here. We carry our cartridges, which were loaded with a mini ball and 60 grains of powder. These flaps would help protect the sparks from your weapon going off and igniting. You don't want this whole bad boy to go off on your hip. It wouldn't be a good day for you. So that's what the cartridge belt did. This is your cap box. The cap box is what ignited the powder inside your rifle. These little caps right here is all it took to fire 60 grains of powder and a bullet towards your enemy. Next would be the bayonet. The bayonet had multiple purposes. It could be used to dig, either in trenching positions. It could be used to kill your enemy, but it could also be used to help light next to your tent. You stick a nice little candle in there, you have some light at night while you're writing in your journal for those soldiers that could read and write. Another part of this was you mount on the front of the weapon to be used as a pike when defending against cavalry or against enemy infantry when you were forced on the charge. This is also a triangular shaped bayonet, which these are now outlawed by the Geneva Convention because of their deadly abilities. A triangle shaped bayonet would punch a hole in someone's flesh and you wouldn't be able to seal it up. Because it was triangle shaped, it was very hard to stitch. So if you got poked with one of those bad boys, good chances you might not make that wound. This is your breastplate. This is federal issued. Federal issued breastplate. Some soldiers have different ones. From Ohio here. Different states might have filled different breastplates, but the federal issue was the American Eagle, along with the U.S. belt buckle. Southern troops, when they find gear on the field, because theirs was scarce, would flip this belt buckle around for Southern nation. So, the last thing is going to be my kepi. I'm a city boy, so I like wearing my kepi, but a lot of these folks from our unit were farm folk, and they worked out in the fields a lot. They were hardy people, and so they would wear the slouch hats. Look like our modern day cowboy hats. But that would help keep the sun off your neck. They could be used to collect water in, and then we also have the forage cap. Yes. Forage cap here, if you flip it upside down, you can use it to collect apples, food, grain, whatever you might have. But it's actually a very useful headpiece. So without further ado, I am Private Crone with the 125th Ohio. Thank you.
Does Private Crone sound like a Marine? About a year ago he was. He got out after spending 6 years in the Marine Corps. We're glad to have him back. Any questions on the uniform or the musket itself that I can answer? Yes. What's your question, son? It's okay.
Bayonet.
Bayonet. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. His question was, if you're running towards the enemy with your bayonet and you got stabbed, would it kill you? It probably would, even if the wound wasn't that bad, because they had no way to treat a wound like that or to close a wound like that. That bayonet is shaped like a triangle. You can't close that kind of wound effectively. Matter of fact, that was the first weapon ever outlawed by the Geneva Convention, was that particular type of bayonet.
What's the rifle weigh?
Pardon?
How much does the rifle weigh?
With the bayonet, probably around 14 pounds, 12 to 14. That's why what the first sergeant was going through earlier, the manual of arms, is primarily to teach you how to carry that weapon in different positions to keep all of the weight off your arm in a single position. And also how to go under low-hanging branches, how to carry it if it's raining, several other things like that, because it's not very comfortable to carry. The other problem with the type of wound this young man was talking about was any type of a belly wound or gut shot wound. You were going to probably die of sepsis. They had no idea what infection was in the 1860s. No idea whatsoever. So if you were hit with a bayonet, you were shot in the gut, you probably weren't going to make it. Any other questions? All right, next thing we're going to show you is how they were. Oh, I'm sorry. Question? Yeah.
What is the hat called that's the shade on the side of the
This is a Hardy hat.
It's a Hardy hat.
Yes. This is in fact the official U.S. federal issue hat in this kind of form, like a slouch hat. This style slouch hat was probably a private purchase item, something a soldier brought from home. But the federal government did actually issue hats like this, and this is one of them. It's called a Hardy hat. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the pictures from back then, when they were first issued, they were taller, they rolled the bills up, all kinds of things with them. If you look at the pictures, the guys that had Hardy hats that were taken down here, they're in all kinds of different positions. configurations. They're crushed down, they're smashed up, they're turned up, you name it. There's a lot more individuality. Plus, by the time we got down here, these guys weren't polishing their brass, they weren't participating in parades, they didn't have bands preceding them wherever they went. They were down here to get this thing over with. They'd already had 500,000 casualties. It was time to end this. That's the difference in the Western Theater troops, which we portray, and what you might see if you're up in New Jersey, New York, Northern Virginia, and you're looking at Eastern Theater Army. Totally two different types of units. I'm going to bring out Corporal Davis right now. And we're going to show you the training steps that they went through to learn how to load this musket prior to firing it. What he has is an 1853 Enfield rifled musket. It's a single shot muzzle loading musket. And you have to go through every one of the 9 steps that I'm going to walk him through to load the musket every time you fire it. A well-trained rifleman could get off about 3 shots in a minute. So taking about 20 seconds each time to go through all of these 9 steps. We'll show you that once the men come down here and fire 3 rounds. They're going to do it in real time. I'm going to show you how they were trained. The command would be load in 9 times. Load. Step 1 is taking the musket down from shoulder arm, putting it with the barrel forward, and notice how the stock automatically pushes, the shape of the stock pushes the barrel away from its face. A lot of these steps that we're using are because of safety. If you fire this musket 3 or 4 times, that barrel gets extremely hot because of the explosion taking place with black powder down in the breech. What he's going to do is he's going to pour black powder down what could be a very, very hot barrel. If you fire this repeatedly, there's a very good chance you could have an ember or spark still burning down in the bottom of that breech. If you pour black powder in that now in a hot barrel and it goes off, the discharge is going to be away from his face. Handle cartridge. Reach back in his cartridge box, pulled out the paper cartridge, 60 grains of black powder, plus the mini ball. I've got some of those. I'll pass these around if you've never seen one. I do need to get them back though, please. They're not reproductions. They are 155 years old.
Is the cartridge
The next command is tear cartridge. Tearing off the top of the paper cartridge, which is, you see why now you had to have at least 2 opposing teeth to be in the infantry. Next command is charge cartridge. Pours the black powder down into the musket, puts the cartridge in the musket. The mini ball is now on the top. It was on the bottom of the cartridge, it's now on the top. Raw rammer. Notice how he has the ramrod at an angle before he puts it in. The reason for this, hot barrel, black powder, it goes off now, that's going to spin harmlessly away from him and away from his file partner. Ram cartridge. Putting the powder, the paper, and the mini ball down in the bottom of the breech. Return rammer. Watch his little finger. Pushes it down with 1 finger. The natural tendency would be to push it down with your hand, but if it went off, you lose your hand, you can't fight anymore. If it goes off with a finger, you still got several other fingers to fight with. Pull that trigger. Prime. Puts the musket at half cock. It will not fire at half cock. You have to pull it back 1 more cock to get it to fire. Takes a cap made of brass with fulminated mercury inside it out of his cap pouch, puts it on the cone. When the hammer hits that, it'll create a spark, it'll go into the black powder and discharge the weapon. Shoulder, arms. That's the 9th step. All right, Corporal, if you step down this way, please. Now we're going to fire a round for you. It will make a noise. It's not tremendously loud, but if you think you have sensitive ears, you might want to cover them. Ready. Aim. Fire. Recover. Arm. Shoulder. Arm. Thank you, Corporal. Well done. How far did that go? How far did that go? If you ever night fire one of these, you'll see the flame come out 12 to 20 feet. Okay. All that was paper coming out. Yeah. The rifle is accurate, very deadly accurate, up to about 150 to 200 yards. It will kill a man of 500 to 600 yards. The problem with that long range is it only comes out at about 760 feet per second. It's pretty low velocity when it leaves the musket, so there's a lot of fall. They do have sights that are adjustable, but they weren't taught marksmanship. They were taught to load quickly and get as much lead down range as you possibly could, unless they were sharpshooters. Any other questions on the firearm? All right.
I've lost the word. But,
I'm sorry?
I've lost the word, but the pouch with the ball and the
Cartridge box?
cartridge, thank you. Did they pack their own, or was
No,
this-
they were sent in packs of 10. Yes, thank you. There'd be a pack of 10 wrapped in paper with string, and there'd be also a cartridge in there with 12 caps in it. And actually, how those were made is pretty much women working in factories back at home, putting them together and sending them to the government, and out they went to the field.
Rosie?
Yeah, absolutely.
The ball and the cartridge were.
I'm sorry?
The ball and is separate. The ball and the cartridge.
No, this was actually attached. The mini ball was actually attached to the cartridge itself. Now this, if you've seen this, it's not a ball, is it? The mini ball was invented by a French artillery lieutenant named Manet. Well, Americans aren't real good at pronouncing French names, so it got modified over the years to mini ball, because they were used to shooting balls in smooth bore muskets. It's not a ball. All right, the first side is going to take your men out now. He'll run through just a few maneuvers, changing them from, say, a column of twos into a battle line, that type of thing. We don't have a lot of time right now because everything's going on to go through a lot of motions for you. But believe me, they drilled a lot on how to get a large number of men from point A to point B and how to react to an enemy hitting them from different directions. A lot of time. We just don't have time to go through all that today. You can take them down here. I'm going to fire 3 rounds for you. We're going to fire them a little differently. Thank you. Go, Sergeant. All yours. Thank you.
Attention company. Shoulder, hard. Rank, right, bay. Forward, hard.
Take them out in a column of 2s. Typically, you would march in a column of 4s. But you can get more men into the battle quicker that way. The modern day army normally marches in a column of 8. Well, the bridges and the roads back then weren't wide enough to allow 8 people side by side, plus file closers on either side, to get across that bridge or down that road. So back then, things out of necessity, they would typically march in a column of 4. Now what he did just there is he took them from a column of 2s into a battle line. This formation right here is how you would go in to face any enemy that was approaching you. Did a right wheel.
Forward, hard. Left wheel, march.
Really good on the inside. Push down.
Hard. Low. Low.
Right, he gave them the command load. They're not going to go through each of the 9 steps except in their mind, so they're doing it in actual time. As I said, they could, if they were good, they could load and fire 3 shots in a minute. You're going to see a lot of variation here because we've got one guy in the ranks that used to reenact, but he hadn't been in a reenactment since 2013. He's going to be a little slower. We've got some new recruits and we've got some veterans that are going to be able to load much quicker. Something we work on quite a bit. Once they're ready, like the corporal, you see he came up real quickly. Once they're ready, they come to the shoulder. That lets the person giving the firing commands know that the whole company is ready to fire.
Firing by the ring.
So fire by the rank, starting with the rear rank.
Hey. Fire.
He's not going to reload. He's going to fire by the rank using the front rank.
Ooh, big.
Front rank. Ready. Hey. Fire.
Now you learned that there's 2 ranks. units in a normal Civil War formation. You've heard the term rank and file. Well, we got rank taken care of. What a file is the first two men on this side, the corporal and the large gentleman behind him is the first file. The two next to him is the second file. Two next to them is the next file, and all the way down the line. So what he's going to do is fire by the file, which means two men are going to fire at the same time, starting from the right. They'll move all the way down the company. So if you had an 80-man company, it would take quite a while for all those files to fire. Once you fire by the file, you reload, you continue to fire independently until you get a ceasefire command.
So what you're saying, you'd have 40 files firing.
Yeah. Okay. In Gettysburg, last year, I had a battalion, I got 190 in my battalion. So firing by the file, or firing by the battalion was pretty nice. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Companies back then, when they first started out, were about 100 men. The battalion was up to 10 companies, so that's about 1,000. But the 125th Ohio, which is our group, started out when they left camp with about 700. By the time they got down here, after fighting their way all the way down what is now I-75, they had about 260.
Is that casualties or?
And then they took another 40% in casualties. Firing by the company. This is where everybody in a company or battalion would fire at the same time. That was pretty good. It should sound like one musket going on.
Yes, one big
Now you
one.
learned a couple things here. Number one, you saw how smoky it is with about 12 people. Imagine 100, or imagine 10,000, or imagine 100,000. How much smoke can be on a battlefield, especially if you add in the artillery. Now you know when you see any Civil War reenactment or demonstration, you know why the chevrons on the sleeves of the NCOs are so large. Now you know why the flags they carry are so big. You can't see when you're out here. The other thing which is ridiculous is you can't hear, which is why they're packed so tightly together. That's not for defense, that's so they can hear the command. If I do a 2-day reenactment with one battle each day, I can't speak legibly until about Wednesday. I'm so hoarse. Because you're yelling at the top of your lungs.
Company, halt, front. Right, hard. Reset, halt. Reset, hard.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be here for a little while for questions. That's about all we have.